Thanks for everybody coming out. So I'm going to be talking about Composite Builds. We should have seen a really good demo from Daz during the keynote. It's probably actually much better than what I'm going to be showing here because I'm going to be talking about a bunch of other stuff, but we're going to get started. So I'm Sterling Green. I'm a Gradle core developer. You can hit me on the Twitters and the GitHubs, all you like there. I'm going to be going through some slides and talking about composite builds, but also more generally into multi-repos and mono-repos and that kind of thing. And then I have a couple demos. They're command line demos. And then I'll be happy to try to answer some questions about kind of the details of what's going on with composite builds. Okay. So historically, Gradle has had two ways to kind of combine your projects together. You can have a mono-repo, or you can have a multi-repo. How many people in here would classify their kind of organization as a multi-repo organization? Okay. And how many would say that you're a mono-repo? And how many people don't know what either one of those are? Okay. So with a multi-repo, you're typically keeping your software divided up into multiple repositories. When you build your software, you're building it and putting it into an artifactory, some sort of external repository. And then when you want to combine things together, you're using external dependencies to pull them into your projects. And usually what that looks like is in your Gradle projects, you've got some settings files with multiple. You have either one project or multiple projects in a build. You're using dependencies that look like this with coordinates of group name, version to kind of combine them together. And some of the advantages of that is that it's very strong separation between things. You can say this project and this project are separate repositories. They are built separately. They have separate life cycles. They're completely different or completely separate. So you can have different release cycles. You can have different development processes, schedules for those projects. And you can also kind of work with a subset. So you can have developers only checking out the 3 projects they ever work on. They don't have to see everything else. But there's some disadvantages with this. When you have binary integration, you basically have to be very disciplined with your versioning scheme. You use semantic versioning or something like that, and making sure that when new projects are released or new modules are released, that you're able to pull them in and test them in all the different places. You also usually have a really hard time developing locally because you have to publish to a local repository or do some fiddling around in the IDE in order to pull in like a locally built jar file. And then it's also really hard if you want to have a CI build that says, okay, we know in our real world we're going to be using these separate repositories and they're going to be using binary dependencies between them. We want to pull them all together and build them all together because that's how we're really going to what we're going to publish at the end to our customers. And so you can actually develop this like divide between the CI builds completely differently than your developer build, which makes it really hard for developers to know, and what I'm building, is it going to really be what I deploy? And so the mono-repo goes sort of the other way. Instead of having a bunch of different software repositories, you can have just one giant software repository. You can also have a single Gradle build in that repository that has every single possible project that might get built in it. And then when you do integration between components, you're just saying, I depend on this other project over there. So in Gradle, you'll see, I have a settings.gradle file that's in the root of my repository, and it has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects listed in it. And when I have dependencies, I just say, oh, I have a dependency on project, whatever it is. And so this is good because it's like the developer says, you tell the developer, go check out this repository, run build, and they have everything. They're going to build everything. If they make any changes anywhere, you're going to see those changes immediately. So there's no question about with a multi-repo setup where what I'm building against may not be what gets built against on CI. In the monorepo, it's always in the same place. You're always building everything from source. You kind of know what everything is. But this has some disadvantages because you kind of need special tooling around, I want to do partial checkouts. I want to be able to only check out the 3 parts of the monorepo that I'm actually working on. I want my teams to be structured in a way that this team works on this half of the tree and this team works on this other half of the tree, and they don't stomp on each other. And you also have to have focus with and discipline with keeping projects kind of distinct, right? It'd be really easy if I'm all in one big repository to start saying, oh, I'll just pull stuff from over here and I'll pull stuff from over here, and they get intertangled in a way that they're not really separate projects anymore. They're really just one project that builds in a kind of a weird way. And then you also might have problems with resources or just tool chains or whatever, with a single developer may not be able to just check out the monorepo and run build and get done within that day or something. It might take a long time to build everything. So Composite Build is kind of like our answer for, we want to break down that difference between an external dependency and a project dependency. We want you to be able to say, I want to compose these software components kind of however I want to, right? And also have each of them kind of maintain their own separate identity. Kind of like Constructicons. I never had these as a kid. I always wanted it, but I had to find this picture to put in here. This is my one goofy picture for the whole slide. So I'm trying to be careful with the way I describe things. There's some jargon going on here of Gradle projects, Gradle builds, which are made up of projects, Gradle composite builds, which are made up of other Gradle builds, and we also sometimes call a Gradle build that's in a composite a participant. So you can think of a participant as a wholly separate build, Gradle build that might be a multi-project, it might be a single project that's in a composite. So there's a lot of text here, but Composite Build builds on top of a feature was introduced in 2.5 called Dependency Substitution. Basically, it allows you to say this coordinate, this group, this artifact, this version is substituted by this other project, or vice versa. And our goal is to allow you to take these multiple discrete, separate builds, Gradle builds, and combine them in a way that makes it look like it's monorepo when it's convenient to be so, or it looks like a multi-repo when it's convenient to do that. The dependencies between projects, dependencies between components are expressed through external coordinates as opposed to project dependencies. And the cross participants, so all the different builds are wired together in such a way that it looks like a single multi-project build when you actually do the build. So there's a little bit of an honorable mention to this if you've ever seen Prezi Pride. Prezi Pride was some of the driver behind adding dependency substitution support, and it has a very similar idea of taking multiple repositories, multiple projects, and combining them. So some of the big differences between composite builds and just having a really big multi-project build is in a composite build, we actually can have different versions of Gradle being used at the same time. And if, in a multi-project build, you can say all projects or sub-projects to inject configuration into your multi-project builds. And Gradle participants are kept separate. So you don't get different behavior when I say take these two projects, make them a composite. One's not injecting configuration into the other because they're kept separate. And like I said, there's also dependencies between participants are using the external group artifact version coordinates. Another kind of cool thing that almost works is you can actually have build script dependencies in your composite. So you can have a project that needs a plugin, and you can take the plugin project and you can put them in a composite and make modifications to the plugin and see those changes in the actual build. So some caveats here. There's no built-in way. So the demo that Daz showed off, he's sitting over there on the floor. So I have to give credit. Daz is the driving force behind most of this stuff. If there are bugs, they're probably my bugs. So one of the things that in the demo you saw was, hey, you can just say include build in your settings file, and you get a composite build. So that's true in that branch of Gradle, but it's kind of an experimental change. Right now, there's only a programmatic interface to adding composite builds. So the demo I'll be showing here actually uses that experimental branch, just like the keynote. In upcoming in Build Ship 2.0, it'll be using this programmatic interface, and so it'll be probably the first IDE that has support for taking composite builds and importing them into an IDE natively. So some advantages of using composite builds. So like a multi-repo, developers can check out just the pieces that they actually want to work on. They don't have to have everything. But like a monorepo, when they're building, they know that the things they have checked out in their composite are the things that they're building against. There's no question about, did I publish to Maven local? Am I setting up the path just right so I'm getting the right jar file? All that. And then like a multi-project, we can kind of separate your teams based on the way you want you separate your projects the way you want to separate your organization, so they can be clustered together. Say these projects all belong to this team, and they can have their own kind of release cycle and everything else, but still combine them together in a composite at the end. So like a monorepo, even if you have all those separate projects, all those separate teams, we can combine everything together, and so it looks like a monorepo build. And so in that way, CI and the developer build looks exactly the same. Okay, so disadvantages right now. So there's support that needs to be done for adding tooling support to be able to import these composite builds into an IDE. You can generate the metadata files in a lot of cases. Dependency substitution is only working for Java-like projects, so built in the Gradles of Java, Groovy, Scala, Play, those things, they kind of just work. And I think it also only works with participants that have the same version of Gradle. So if you have a build that has Gradle 1.1, right, you're not going to get dependency substitution working for it. Composite Build right now is mostly limited to the tooling API, the programmatic interface for Gradle. So you can, if you've ever seen the tooling API, you can basically say, I want to make a new composite connection. I want to add these builds into my composite, and then I can then have a programmatic way of saying, run this task, run this build, ask for information from it, that kind of thing. And another kind of limitation right now is you can't have composites of composites. So I can't define a composite, define another composite, and then define like a composite on top of all of that. Right now it's just only one level. Okay, so I have a couple kind of pre-recorded demos here we'll run through. So this first one is a multi-repo build. It looks very similar to the one during the keynotes. And what it does is it brings it together as a monolith, as a monorepo build. And let's see if I can make this bigger. So there's some stuff you can read. There's a URL at the end of the let me stop for a second. There's a URL at the end of the presentation for getting a copy of all these slides and the demos and the recordings and everything. So with this, we have our project. We have our two. Where is it? I've broken it. Okay. So we have our two projects, the My App and the My Utils, and what you'll see is when I go into My App and I want to build it by itself, that fails because there's no My Utils artifact deployed anywhere. And so then if I go in and I'll say, okay, if I really want to do this the old way, then I have to go into my utils. I have to run something to upload to archives, put them in, make them local, and then go back to my app, and then I can run it again. And this time it'll actually run, and it'll produce the right answer. So that's sort of like the way it looked like before. Now with the new way, I can basically define a composite build. So just like in the demo, I have a include build my app and my util, and I can run the same my app run task. And as you can see here, we're actually is building the my utils pieces before it runs my app and produces the right answer. So, and in this case, nothing's coming from a local install. Nothing's coming from external repository. It's all coming locally. So, kind of another cool thing that you can do with this is we don't necessarily have to have a we don't have to be combining other projects that we can control. Maybe there's a third-party library that we want to patch and make changes to, and we want to be able to just make the patch, put it in our local repository, and then use it until the patches get accepted upstream or something like that. So in this case, I have our third party here describing what's going on, and I'm going to clone the Commons Lang Git repository, and then it's actually a Maven project. So once the clone is done, I'll go into it and I'll run Gradle init, which will take a Maven POM and turn it into a Gradle build. And I'll just take that exactly and add the Commons Lang project, add the Commons Lang build to my composite. And now when I run the same build, what we'll see is output from building my utils, but also building Commons Lang. And I've ingested it, and I haven't had to change any of my builds to say, oh, when you're using Commons Lang, you actually need to use our special build, or you have to use different coordinates or anything like that. It just automatically gets pulled in. That's pretty cool. So another kind of thing, this is a similar idea, only now we're looking at two projects. One is a consumer of a plugin. One is the actual plugin project. And what we want to do is I want to be able to make changes to my plugin and then go back and run my build and see what that looks like. So I remember this now. Okay. So a lot of text for you to read later if you like. Basically, I'm going to run my consumer build without any special changes to the plugin. And what we'll see is the greeting. It says, "Good day, Bob." We like saying hello a lot in Gradle. Makes us happy. And so now I'm going to go in and change the implementation of the plugin, and I'm going to make it say hello instead. Like I'm just miming like I'm typing here. And then if I go back into the consumer and I try to run the build again, you're not going to see any changes because I'm not using composite here. I have a separate consumer build. It's not going to pull those changes in unless I'm in a composite. So if we go into the composite now and actually run the build, then we'll see the same build. We'll see the custom plugin being built first, and then now it produces hello Bob instead of good day. And the script for this, the settings file looks very similar to the one before. We say include build consumer, include build plugin, and you can kind of combine them that way. So how am I on time? I am, okay. So the last couple slides, you'll probably see a little bit of this everywhere. If you like what you're seeing, you like the whole build automation, maybe automation in general kind of segment, we're also hiring. We'd love to find out anything about you. And there's also the Griddle cloud services and the build scans. There's nothing special for Composite Build with build scans yet, but it's very interesting. You should really take a look at it. If there's any questions, I would love to try to help and answer those. Alan? Yes. Yes. It's the same. It's the same. So if you look in the demo, there's a caveat of what the limitation is. But yes, so there's nothing special about including a plugin or including a non-plugin type project. I would also, there's a talk I think later today from Ben about test kits. So if you're really serious about building tests around your plugin and exercising them and knowing that they're correct, I would definitely go check that out, because I think test kit is like the magic sauce for writing really good build scripts. Chris? Sure. 2.13, 14? What is it, Daz? Yeah. Mhm. It's only for composites. So if you had a composite that was A, B, and C, and you had another composite that was D, E, and F, and you wanted to make a composite X that could took those two composites and put them together, there's not a way of doing that. You would have to say composite X is A, B, C, D, E, F, all at once. Yeah. Okay. Sir? Yes, it's on the next slide. Yeah. Sir? Mm-hmm. How do you see any use in the CI/CD? Right. So it's kind of weird. So yeah, it depends on how you have your CI stuff set up. Like Daz you saw in the keynote, you can have tools, or if you're using Repo or something like that, you can have it so that it pushes all the changes together at once. Where you'd have to be careful with that is you would have to have your build like building the monorepo only, like building the full thing always, or something like that, or some subset. Like you'd have to basically have your CI pipeline set up for build composite, not build individual project, that kind of thing. Sir, yes. Mhm. Right. Right. So with a composite, you're always going to be using the external coordinates. You won't be using project dependencies. And I believe the way it works is that we will always prefer, if you're in a composite, we will always prefer the project dependency for it. I don't know if we have a way yet to say force. I don't think we have done that. We have some interest in doing something like that, of saying that these have to be this way. They can't be project dependencies or something. Right. I'm saying versions ignored for this. It's always going to say. Right. Right. Sir. Hmm? Yes. So right. If you're just combining projects together and you're not having to use dependency substitution across projects, if you're just using it as like an orchestration tool, say when I do a build, I want to build all of these, and I want to build all of these, and I want to build all of these, but there's no dependencies between them, then it's basically back very old. If you want to have dependency substitution, like you've seen in some of these examples, I think it's 2.14 and newer. They have to be. And is it still restricted that they all have to be 2.14 and the same version? Yeah. So it'd be 2.14 and newer that you can actually get the substitution. Sir. When Dad stops being distracted. Um, sir. Mm-hmm. Is it limited to just jars, or is it limited to?
Works the same as project dependencies work now. And project dependencies make some assumptions about what project will use. But it's basically anything that uses configuration and
Yeah.
project dependencies will work. But in native, it doesn't work with native because we have different sequential resolution.
Okay. Sir. Right. I think right now it's limited to the default publications, isn't it? Mm. 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 Oh, in fact. Yep. Yeah. Right. So I think I think the way we have it right now is if you have a composite, all the members of the composite have to be there. I believe that's the case right now. So if you were to delete my utils from it and you still were trying to build with the composite, it would fail. If you removed the my utils from the composite, then it would just go back to using the external dependency as opposed to a local one. Okay. So I'm gonna say there's a survey that you guys can go take a look at. It has some feedback about the summit and other things. There's my Twitter handle and also the URL to the slides. Is there any other questions I can try to help answer? Maybe. I'm not sure. That's always a very tough question. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah. So the for the IntelliJ side, I think you can still generate you can't use the auto import that the IntelliJ has, but you can generate the metadata and it will look just as if it were a single project at that point. So that's okay. Right now, the places I would be looking at it if you were interested in something like this, I think the build ship is out for a couple more months or something. I don't think it's Neon. It's whatever is after Neon. And the really I think interesting people to look at it now would be people who are making like tool makers on top of Gradle. That's right now, since it's really the programmatic interface is the only place that you can really use it. If you are building something to run Gradle builds, that's really interesting to look at. And then in terms of when the experimental branch gets put in, I mean, I think we're talking about after 3.0. It's whenever we can finally settle it, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. So I think with that, that's also other places that would need special handling to know when I run this task, I have to tell Gradle to run it in the context of the composite, and not just run it on this one. Like the IDE right now only knows about this one project, and I want to run this one task. It's in that project. But with a composite, it's kind of like you need to know, I'm going to run it in a composite. It has all these participants in it, and I'm going to run this task, and that task is in this one particular participant. And that part right now is not. There's a programmatic interface for it, but there's no IDE support for that yet. But like Dad says, I want to combine things together, and if I want to run tasks, I can run tasks from the command line in the composite context, but I can't run it from the IDE yet. Okay. I'm kind of screwed up on how our time is here. Are we really, really short, or are we really, really long? Okay, good. All right. Thank you.